Welcome back to the second half of On Track with Betty Mack. And I'm very excited about the guest that I'm going to be interviewing. And I mentioned to her, I said, this is a difficult interview for me. It's a very moving and touching interview, and I'm sure that you're going to enjoy it. I'm very happy to have Corey Minor-Smith. She's an author and a transformational speaker. Welcome, Corey.
Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. And Corey, I've been knowing you for a while.
Yes.
But I didn't really know you.
Right.
You know, after reading your book, because I see this beautiful woman and smiling all the time. And of course, everybody has pain in their life, but some have a little more than others. But I think the remarkable thing is that you've persevered. Mm-hmm. And you've let people know through this book that you can make it. You have a dream, that you continue to pursue the dream. But I want to know first, you knew some years ago you were going to write this book, right?
Yes.
What was in you that made you think, I'm going to write this book?
Well, I actually said it verbally out loud for the first time when I was 16. I remember talking to my cousin. He was actually one that I lived with in Texas, in Houston, Texas, and they were visiting here in Canton.
Right.
And just my life at that time, I knew I had a story, but I didn't know the full story. Mm-hmm. And I just said, I'm going to write a book.
Okay.
So several years later, I've now, committed time, because I would say at least the last 10 years, I've committed actual time to getting it done.
It took that. But you know, when you said, I'm going to do it, that's the power of the spoken word.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, when you put it out there, then it happens.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
but there was a lot of steps, and you said 10 years, right?
Yes. Well, there's a lot of things
that went on
going
between,
on
right?
in the last 10 years.
Right.
Running for office, life changes,
exactly.
Just a bunch of stuff. But I was committed to continuing to write. I had to develop, the focus and how it was going to be organized. Because it's not easy to follow. My life is not easy to follow.
You are so right. And I was kind of going back and forth. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And you did it in age sequences, where I was this age and I did this and this and that and that. So let's talk about, for those who really don't know you and have not read your book, and I know when this is over, they're going to go buy your book.
Yeah.
So Driven, where did you come up? Why Driven?
Well, I had this long-winded title before, and it was basically like an acronym of my initials, CMS, and it was Continuously Motivated to Succeed. That was a lot.
You know what? Now, you said that, but I didn't connect that with your name.
Yes.
Okay.
And I felt like those words fully described me, because there was just no other way to explain, this drive that I had, despite all of the different obstacles that I've continued to face. And in shortening that, I remember writing an article for a local magazine out of Atlanta called Trendsetter to Trendsetter magazine.
Oh, yes, of course.
And the title of that article is called Driven. And I'm like, that's it. Like, that's
you.
The title of the book. And so
I like that.
We put the hashtag.
Okay, I like that. Hashtag
Yeah.
Driven.
Yes.
Now, Corey, of course, you first started, you moved so many times in your life. Talk about, how did that affect you when you're in Houston, then you're back in Canton, then you're back and forth, and you're just all over the place as a young girl?
Started early, yeah.
Yeah, started early.
The first plane ride being before I started school, so between 3 and 4 years old, leaving Canton and going to California. And I started preschool and kindergarten in California, but then came back to Ohio. But there were a lot of moves, and that's just between the states. As far as the moves within the cities and states, that would just be a number. I don't even know what the number is, but it's a lot. But I think it shows a testament to my ability to acclimate to wherever I am.
Right.
I was definitely, most of the time, always the new girl.
In school, on the block, everything, right?
Yeah.
And you just fit in, though.
Well, yeah, usually there was someone that remembered me from the time when I was there before, and they kind of helped introduce me to the group, whatever group that was.
She's back.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was very helpful. Yeah, that was very helpful.
So that was very helpful.
Yes.
And then you had your challenges and your struggles. Your mom and dad were both very young.
Yes.
And they were not married, and you were kind of back and forth with the two of them, and then they had their challenges, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you probably felt like, I'm in the middle of all of this?
Just trying to understand what my role was and what I was to do, and many times seeking some type of authority over my life. Like, who's in charge here?
Right.
And
I bet you
times-
felt like you were in charge sometimes,
yeah,
right?
Yes, making some major decisions. And, you know, my dad was a disciplinarian. We used to call him Mr. No, like he was
is
the
that
no
right?
man,
Okay.
because everything was no. But doing it anyway, there wasn't really a consequence. And I learned, you know, the hard way about consequences.
Okay.
And I think, well, I know what really changed my life was being suspended from school. That helped me to want to do better,
How
seek
old were you?
more for my life. I was in middle school. It was like 8th, 9th grade.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Yes.
Yeah, so you were a little naughty, and so you
Yes.
got suspended.
I was.
I can't imagine Corey being naughty,
Yeah.
right? Okay. A little bit naughty.
And I openly talk about the things that I call myself getting into, trying to get into, you know, trying to sell drugs, like literally trying to sell drugs.
Yeah. And you said trying to sell
Yes.
drugs, right?
Yeah, trying, because
you
we
didn't
would
know,
go to people
right?
like, hey, can we sell for you? But it's like, no, you're too young, you'll get beat up, my money and my drugs
Yeah.
stolen, so no. But we really tried that. And I can laugh, but it's really not funny because I was so young. We were so young, the young ladies that I hung with. But it's a reality for young people like right now, today.
Yeah, and it's happening
Absolutely,
today.
it is happening. So it seems unimaginable, but it is real. It is real, real, real.
You know what? I think the fact that you can laugh about it now means a lot. It was very painful when you were going through it, but you had to have a somewhat of a sense of humor to even get through a lot of the challenges that you had in your life.
But also just the mere fact of faith. So this book does touch on 5 principles, and
most
you know,
definitely.
throughout the
Faith
book
is-
is segmented with the 5 different principles: faith, motivation, determination, preparation, and action. And so the very beginning of the story is the faith section.
And I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. I honed in on that.
The early foundation was being made to go to church. So again, my father, he was like, you know, if you don't do anything else, you have to go to church on Sunday. So he may not have went, but he made us go. And I believe that that gave me the foundation I needed to be within myself. So no matter where I may have strayed, you know, I went
It was
back.
in you. And you know, Corey, I think that's missing today because our youth don't go to church, because the parents don't go. A lot of the parents don't go to church. And I was made to go.
Right.
You know, well, you know, ours was, well, you don't have to go, but you won't get to go to the movie.
Right,
Okay,
right.
There's
That
a
was
consequence,
it.
right? Right. So, I'm going to Sunday school.
Right.
And I liked it because one of your songs, and it took me back, the B-I-B-L-E.
Yes, I love it.
That's right.
I love that song.
Yeah, and that was, I said, oh, wow, she sang that song too.
Yeah.
And I'm quite a bit older than you, but we sang it.
Right.
You know, so I thought it was good. But you know, there was one part when you're talking about faith, and then you went through something in the book that, I mean, it just blew me away. You had an experience with God, and you didn't know what was happening to you.
Yes.
And Reverend Beverly Lewis.
Yes.
Talk about that.
That was a very powerful day. I was going through a lot, going through my divorce, trying to make a decision of whether I was going to actually go forward with the divorce. And all I wanted to do was just go sit in church, not necessarily hear a sermon or anything like that. I just felt like I just needed to sit in church and feel whatever presence I would feel that day.
Yes.
And so this song came on, and I stood up, and you know, I might raise one hand.
Yeah.
But this time it was just raising both hands, just in total surrender. And I just remember like yelling out, "Thank you, Jesus!"
That's
you know,
right.
"Thank you, Jesus!" And I was like unconscious in some moments, and then I would gain consciousness, and I kept thinking, "Is somebody gonna come get me?"
You said that in your
I
book,
lost
right.
control.
Right.
And I think I'm, you know, kind of control-natured.
Yeah. I would think so.
So it totally was not me.
It wasn't you.
You know, I had no control
It was
over the
God.
situation, even though I wanted somebody else to take control because I didn't have control
Out
at
of
that very
control.
moment.
But see,
Yes.
God knows when we're at our limit. And that's when he really comes in and says, this is who I am. And he showed you in that moment who he was, because you were
Yes.
out of control. You couldn't control it.
Right.
And he wasn't allowing it to, because that was the Holy Spirit. You know,
Absolutely.
taking control. And I read that, I'm like, wow.
Yes, I
That's-
truly felt it.
Yeah, and I felt it as I read it.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
a good thing about your book, you know, a lot of people will be able to relate to some things in their lives and say, wow, Corey went through that too.
Yes.
You know, but it's good that you're talking about it, because that helps free people to say, wow, she made it. I can do this. You know, I can do it. Corey is strong, and she went through this. But you had lots of challenges. Your mom, dad, you talked about drugs, trying to sell drugs,
Yes.
you know, and everything. And then trying to do a little bit of drugs, you know,
Yeah.
but the alcohol kind of overruled that, I think,
Yes.
right?
But
So-
I learned at an early age, you know, one part is fortunate that I learned at an early age,
Right.
but unfortunately it was a young age about drinking and that it was not for me. Again, that control
right.
element, because
Yes.
I lost control of my
Right.
limbs,
Oh.
of my function, and I did
You
not
could
like that.
that's right.
I did not like it at all.
Being out of control, so you know, oh, that's not for me.
Right.
But see, some people get caught up and they can't control it, and they just keep doing it
Yes.
and keep doing it, and that's. But you're here to say that you can control it. You know,
Yes.
if you want to. You're saying that's not me, and you said that's not me.
Right.
That's not who I am. That's not who I want to be. And so through all of that, and you went through that, and you're back and forth, and the moving around, and then everybody's always looking for love, right? Women, basically. I mean, guys look for it too.
Yeah.
But you know, we always want to be loved. Everybody
Yes.
wants to be loved, right? So trying to find that love, it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard. Talk a little bit about what you wrote in the book about trying to find the love and help some women out here watching. Okay.
Well, I mean, quite honestly, like the love aspect of my life was more focused on the family, a sense of family, and looking for that. I knew by the age of 9 that I wanted a family.
Oh, okay.
Living with my father, he was married, and so I had my stepmother and my stepsister, and I remember driving in my dad's Skylark, or Buick Skylark. I don't even know if they make those.
I don't think they do, but I know what a Skylark is.
But I and my stepsister were in the back seat, and my dad was driving, and my stepmom was in the front seat, and I'm like, this is it, you know, to myself.
Right.
This is it. I want
Wow.
a family. I want
Wow.
a family like this.
Yes.
You know, and that's just what I wanted throughout my life. And I remember being in like 6th and 7th grade. We had home economics back then.
That's
and I was
right.
like, I'm gonna have 2 kids. You know, be married, have 2 kids, and
Gonna
names gonna be
cook.
Michael and Michelle. You know, because of the Cabbage
it.
Patch dolls. You know,
Oh,
there was
that's
a
right.
Michael Anthony
That's
Cabbage
right.
Patch doll, and I just
Yes.
wanted. They were too expensive.
Yes.
I never did get a Cabbage Patch doll. But that's what I wanted. Yep.
And you knew it at an early age, and you strived throughout your younger years to
I
get
did.
that, and you
I
wanted
saw
that.
it in the men that I dated.
Right.
You know, starting with the first one out of high school and going into college.
Right.
His parents had been together for so long, and in my mind, it was
Wow.
like, oh, that could be us, you know. And then the man that I ultimately married, the father
Right.
of my children, it was
Right.
ultimately, oh, that could be us, because
Right.
it seemed like everybody in his family, his parents, his aunts and uncles, they all had long, and still do,
Right.
long-term marriages. And I just saw that for us, you know,
Right.
and unfortunately it
just
didn't work out.
Right.
But, you know, we still
move
have
on.
our children,
That's
and we
right.
still have to co-parent them.
Most definitely.
So
And then that can be challenging.
It
You know, there's a
can.
lot of people co-parenting out here. Sometimes it's not so smooth, but you try to make it work for the children's sake.
Absolutely.
Right? You have to do that. Now let's talk a little bit about your mom. And I know that was very hard for you. And throughout her life, you've always been there for her. You know, in some parts of it, you were an enabler and didn't realize it.
Yes.
Right? Because it was mom,
Right.
and you loved her. So talk just a little bit about, to give them a flavor of what's in your book about your mom.
Well, a lot of one of the main purposes for this book is to help individuals who have loved ones with serious mental illness. And
Right.
in my case, it is my mother.
Right.
And it has been an ongoing complex challenge throughout my life, or at least once I was able to identify or know. So I was
What it
around
was.
12 or 13 when she was first committed to the hospital. And it's just a really difficult
It's hard.
situation, and I strongly encourage people to take advantage of the resources that are available in the community,
Right.
because you cannot do it yourself.
No, you
It is a
can't.
very stressful situation,
Right.
but it is possible. It's a very difficult situation, but
Yes.
it is possible. And so for me, along with my family, we work together, you know, many times with law enforcement, many times with the behavioral health agencies, from here to Bowling Green, because at one point she lived with me.
You're in
as
college,
a-
and she came to
yes.
live with you in college.
Yes.
It's like, why not? She's my mom.
Right. I'm her only child, and I felt
Yeah.
obligated. I felt like I could not say no. So, but that was very challenging, because I was a student, you know, working classes, and basically we switched roles. I was the mother and she was the child. But again, using resources that were available, it was very helpful to just have support.
Right. How did and how does it affect your children?
Well, I really don't know. You know, with my younger son, he wasn't around it as much as my older son. I had my oldest son my senior year at Bowling Green State University, and at that time, my mother was still in Bowling Green. So in her more able times, she, you know, helped with him, and I am very grateful to her and all others who helped, because I would not have finished in 4 years without the help of everyone, family and friends that took their part in helping us to get through. But with my oldest son, he's seen more of it. And as I talk in the book, it seems like at some point he was more, he never said it, but it was more like kind of taking a back seat to the situation and not necessarily wanting to be around
and
it.
not understanding it too, I'm sure. You know, mental illness is it's very hard. It's very difficult. And your mom was like in and out of different places trying to get help.
Yes.
And I think you talked a little bit about the pink slip.
Yes.
Talk about the pink slip.
Well, it's a very difficult process.
Yes.
You may think that the person is doing enough, that they need to be committed, but individuals do have rights, and I am grateful for those who advocate and fight for individuals' rights. However, as a family member of one with a serious mental illness is very challenging, because yes, they could be out on their own, living on their own, but how healthy is it? How safe is it?
Exactly.
And in my particular case, many times I am the focus of my mother's psychosis. So, you know, when she's angry, it's directed at me. When she's upset, it's directed at me. Whatever delusions she may have at the time, I'm the center of them. I'm the cause of them. I'm creating whatever issue she thinks is going on at the time.
And that's what
so many times it has put me in a position of feeling unsafe. And then I have to make mental decisions. You know, this is mom versus no, this is not a safe situation. You can't listen to mom right now. And so it's like split-second things that I have to deal with, you know, split-second decisions that I have to make whenever there's like direct contact with her when she's not in a good state.
I don't know if you know it or not, your mother used to go to our church.
Yes.
Okay, she used to come on Sundays, but, and she was quiet, she didn't say, but then one Sunday she came to me and she was angry. Like you said, she takes everything, and she's, and Corey won't do this, and Corey, I was like, what's she talking about?
Yes.
You know, and I said, oh no, that's not Corey's mom, you know. And so then she came back the next Sunday, you know, and she kept saying, and she was angry again, like you said, she takes everything out on you. And so, you know, I said, I'm a little confused. I said, this Corey's mom? And then I found out it was your mother, and I said, oh, what she must be going through. You know, my heart just went out to you and to your mom. You know, because we offer some assistance, and she never really asked us for anything. She would come and sit in the service and clap and participate in the service. But then there would be days when she'd be angry, and it was focused in on you, you know. And I said, wow. But I never said anything to you about that until just now. So
I have had individuals call me because they don't know or did not know that she was my mom, and some of the statements that she made was very alarming to them. And I understand that, but I, you know, very openly, yes, that is my mother. I've never been ashamed or, you know, deny her or anything of that nature. But just giving a level of understanding and, you know, just making people aware, because this is a real life issue. A lot of people in the community are dealing with serious mental illness, and unfortunately, a lot of people don't want to talk about it. And my way of addressing it is talking about it, and talking about it thoroughly.
And that's good. Corey, I think that's really, it's very powerful. Your book is very powerful because a lot of people are going to be able to relate to many aspects of your book. You know, whether it's moving, a lot of people, you know, move so many times in their life. Maybe not as many as you, but they move, you know. And then the mom and dad thing, you love both of them, or do you love them? Do they really love me? Does mom really love me? Does dad really? You kind of talked about, does dad really love me? You know, in the book. And so,
but that was a lot from what my mother told me. You know, and now I can look back on it like maybe my mom wasn't well then. We just didn't know yet. So yeah, that yes. Very emotional.
Very emotional. And so, you know, when I found out that this was your mom coming to church, and then I would watch you and I say, I know she's hurting inside, but you never showed it. You know, you always had that smile, very kind and everything.
My grandmother
you know.
would always say when I was in high school, proud graduate of Timken Senior High School, but my grandmother would always say that I kept busy in order
Yeah.
to not think about the things in my life.
Right.
And that's
Right.
pretty much probably what I am still doing, because there's a
Yeah,
lot of
still a lot of stuff
ongoing
going on,
things.
right.
But
Of
I'm
course.
just determined to continue to move on. It is difficult sometimes, but with support, prayer, faith.
Oh yeah, oh, and all of that. Most
yes.
definitely, that's so very important. And so then you have different. You went through a lot with your pregnancy and everything in school. But talk about your climb in your career and how you were able to manage to still do that.
That is definitely with support.
Okay.
And as I say, people who prayed for me when I didn't know to pray for myself. So I
Right.
definitely did not do all of this on my own.
Right.
There were a lot of people that have been involved in helping me along the way, picking me up when I have been down.
Oh, yeah.
Because one time I said, who motivates the motivator? Like, I need motivation too.
That's right. It's just like the minister, who
Yes.
prays for the minister. He
Yes.
needs prayer also. So that was you.
So totally relying on my circle, especially my immediate circle. I talk a lot about my sister-in-law because she
Yeah.
was just so helpful in introducing me to like self-care type of things, where I always thought those things were a waste of time. Like, I don't have time to do that. I got to do all this stuff.
Right.
But I found the importance of it and the significance and the benefit of doing those things and applying them to my life on a regular basis, not just when I'm in a crisis.
Exactly.
So, I truly thank God for all the people who have been there to support me and keep me
You
going.
have to have that support group. Everybody needs a
Yes.
support group.
Absolutely.
It's very important. And when you have a family member that has a drug or an alcohol problem or mental illness, you really need the support.
Yes.
And I can really relate to that because I went through some challenges in my life. But I think that what you're doing is commendable.
Thank you.
It had to be very difficult for you to kind of write some of this stuff, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you're reliving it as you write it.
Absolutely.
So that had an effect. But talk just a little bit about the degrees
Yes.
that you were able to accomplish.
And you did ask about the
Yeah.
careers as well, but my undergraduate is in English. I knew I wanted to go to law school, and a lot of the people that I talked to and recommendations that were made were to take a major or be in a major that required a lot of reading and writing. So English was one of those things, and history. And I chose English,
Oh,
and I
wow.
had pre-law as like a minor type
Right.
situation. But then when, by that time I graduated, my mother was there, and I wanted to know more about her illness. And that's what
Exactly.
led me into the Master's of Education in Guidance and Counseling, because I learned about DSM-4, all the different
Very
types of
good.
disorders as
right.
they were at that time. There's
Right.
a DSM-5 now.
That's right.
But I just wanted to know more about my mother's illness and how
Very
I can
good.
help, how other people who had this as a part of their lives got through each day. And then on to law school, with my son. He was potty training at the time. So it was a major
Right.
feat, but
Yeah.
able to
But you made it
accomplishment.
through.
Yes,
And then, Corey, you ran for judge.
I did.
You
I
got a
did.
lot of support.
Yes.
A lot of votes. And I hope
Yes.
that's still in the back of your mind.
Thank you.
To do that because, and now we're at city council.
Yes.
You know.
And general counsel for Stark Metropolitan Housing Authority. And
right.
that job is very significant to me because I am a former resident of Stark Metropolitan
Okay.
Housing Authority.
All right.
Very first home that I lived in with my grandmother and my mom was
All right.
1219 Eldon Circle.
Okay.
So I'll always remember that address
That's
and
right.
the other addresses that I lived in.
There was, I believe there was someone in your book you talked about who helped you with speech and speaking very distinctly.
Yes.
Because you're so good with it, and so they worked with you on
Yes,
that, right?
it was my Aunt Niambe.
Okay.
Yes, and the word I remember is reiterate. And
Reiterate, that's right.
But she was very strong in that. She was an educator. She taught in Cleveland, and she would come home on the weekends, and we spent a lot of time together. And I feel like ultimately I was the daughter she never had.
Oh, and it's really good because, God is in control of our lives. So everything that you experienced and what you went through to bring you to this point is really to help a lot of other people.
Absolutely.
And your book and your speaking engagements and the places that you're going is going to empower a lot of people or bring people out of maybe if I can say, the funk that they're in.
Yes.
And say, wow, she went through that and look, she's accomplished so much. But it's all it's not, you didn't do it without the challenges that you went through.
Absolutely. And that's the
You
point
know?
I'm making. You know, a
Yeah.
lot of people see the accomplishments, and we
Right.
live in this world of social media, so it's like all these
Right.
posts, everything's perfect, but it's not. And I wanted to share just the obstacles because we don't hear about that part. We think it's like a overnight success type situation, and it's really not. So I openly shared a lot of my obstacles to just show that it is a rough climb up the mountain.
Yeah, it is.
Skin
right.
thick knees and everything, but it is
Right.
possible.
Right, it is very
Yes.
possible. You did it. Your mom was with you. The one thing I liked, you know, you just stuck with your mom. You know, you didn't understand it all, but that's my mom.
Right.
And you have to do that, and you did that, and I'm sure you're still going through some
Absolutely.
things, Corey. And I want you to know that you're in my prayers, and I really commend you for doing this and taking this major step to write this book.
Yes.
That's really good for all of us that read it. So you all, if you don't have a copy of Corey's book, you really need to get a copy. And I know you can get it on Amazon because I
Yes,
got mine. Is there any
absolutely.
place else, Corey, or is this
Sure.
Amazon?
Downtown Canton at Medtime Pharmacy, as well
Okay.
as at John Strauss's furniture store.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
And the
Very good.
library has copies available for borrowing as well.
Oh, okay, that's good. But get a copy of Corey's book. You will not regret it. There's so much in there. We didn't talk about everything in the book, but we did some highlights.
Yes.
So Corey, thank you so much for coming and sharing your
Yes.
story.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much
that.
for having me.
You're very welcome. And thank you for watching. See you next.